While millions of tourists rush toward the great waterfall, all flowing in one direction, we pause for a moment and let our gaze flow against the current. To see deeply is to see truly. Niagara, the deep. Because behind what others rush past lies the real face of Niagara. Today, the place we've reached by flowing against the current holds the heavy, quiet time of the 1800s, hidden beneath the glittering spray of the falls. If you want to spend the quietest afternoon in Niagara, head in the opposite direction from the falls. Right now, in front of me sits fragrant English tea and a freshly baked lemon scone. Outside the window, the river flows without hurry. Butterflies drift through the garden, and a guide in period dress walks quietly down the hallway. A perfectly peaceful afternoon scene. But sitting here with this teacup in my hands, I can't shake one persistent thought. 200 years ago, through this very window, someone would have watched armies crossing the river. On these wooden floors, wounded soldiers would have lain groaning in pain. And the owner of this house, for trying to protect his home, he was forced to walk 300 miles at the age of 56. Most travelers flow from the falls to the wineries, then toward the charming town. But today, we're moving against that current. Drive south along the parkway from Niagara-on-the-Lake for about 10 minutes, and you'll reach a place where the crowds thin out. This is McFarland House, built in 1800. It's the oldest heritage building owned by Niagara Parks. If you ask why this house is so deeply carved into history, the answer lies in its location. Across the river is the United States. Today, it's just a peaceful view of the opposite shore. But in 1812, this river was a front line of war. Fort George to the north, Fort Niagara across the water. And this house stood on the riverbank ridge right between them. Strategically, no army could simply ignore this place. When war broke out, this house became a hospital. The British used it, then when American forces took control, the Americans used it. When the British pushed back, they used it again. One house, taking in wounded soldiers from both enemy and ally, turn by turn. Now let me tell you the most human story this house holds. In 1813, after Fort George fell to American forces, the Americans moved to use this house for military purposes. The owner, John McFarland, 56 years old at the time, refused their demand.
No!
This is my family's home. The result was imprisonment as a prisoner of war. According to records, he was forced to walk to Greenbush, New York, about 300 miles, over 480 kilometers, in 52 days. A distance longer than walking from Seoul to Busan and back, as a prisoner, as winter was beginning, at 56 years old. When I first read this story, it didn't feel like heroism to me, quite the opposite. A man who tried to protect his home ended up being dragged farther from it than he'd ever been. I think one of the cruelest things war does to people is tear them away from the place they call home. In December 1813, as American forces withdrew from Fort George, they set fire to Newark, the old name for present-day Niagara-on-the-Lake. Houses went up in flames in a single night. But McFarland House survived. The most widely accepted explanation is that it was being used as a hospital at the time. The irony is almost unbearable. War consumed this house, and war protected it. In the late 1950s, Niagara Parks acquired and restored the property. It opened to the public in 1959. Today, it operates with guided interior tours, a heritage garden, and a tea room. The garden recreates a 19th century dooryard garden, the practical yet decorative space between the kitchen and the house. Now, it's a quiet terrace that butterflies and birds visit without much concern for history. And then I return to this seat. The reason I love cafes and tea rooms when I travel isn't just for the taste. It's because they let you sit and really look at a place for a long time. The feeling that this single teacup rests on 200 years of time. That's what I think makes McFarland House so special. A few practical tips. I recommend visiting in the late afternoon, when the warm interior light makes the exhibits look most nostalgic. Afternoon tea requires advance reservations, and you really must try the lemon scones. There's an admission fee for the interior tour, but I strongly encourage it. The depth of what you experience is completely different when you hear the stories compared to walking through alone. An old teacup holding memories of war, and one family's desperate story of survival. I hope the time we've spent walking through McFarland House today becomes a journey of reading the stories that places carry, rather than just passing through them. While tourists flowed toward the falls, I walked in the opposite direction today. And I brought to the surface the story of a man who, 200 years ago, had to walk 300 miles because he tried to protect his home. Along this riverbank, there are still stories lying on the bottom, waiting to be brought up. Niagara the Deep is a YouTube channel that helps you experience Niagara more deeply and meaningfully. If you want Niagara to be not just a place you visited once, but a place that keeps coming back to you, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Niagara the Deep. To see deeply is to see truly.